and welcome to Interviewsicle, the Newsicle feature where I interview inspiring people and ask them about their work, their ideas, and the stories behind what they do. Today, I am so excited to be speaking with children's author Barbara Carroll Roberts. She has written some awesome children's books, including Nikki on the Line, A Rose Named Peace, and my favorite, The Metamorphosis of Bunny Baxter. She is releasing a new illustrated nonfiction book for children called When George Washington Bowed to the New Nation on Tuesday, August 11th. The book was carefully researched and tells the surprising story of how George Washington gave up his powerful position as leader and how that decision helped shape America's democracy. Let's get started.
Wake up, tune in, it's time to know what's happening fast, what's moving slow. Stories big and stories small, it's Newsicle, we've got it all. Smart news, cool views, this is Newsicle.
Welcome to Interviewsicle, Miss Roberts. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm just delighted to be here. I'm so glad you invited me.
Thanks. We'd love to get to know you better. Where did you grow up? Can you tell us about your childhood?
Yes, so I grew up in an area of Northern California, the Santa Clara Valley, which you probably know now as Silicon Valley. I was a very outdoorsy kid. I liked to hike in the hills. I liked to climb trees and fly kites and play ball games and all those kind of things. And I have to admit, I was not a big reader. I didn't like sitting still. So I was far happier being outside running around.
You just said you weren't a big reader. You've also said you were slow to start reading and lacked confidence reading aloud. What changed in high school?
Yes, like I said, I didn't really like to read. And part of that was because it was hard for me to learn to read. But when I was in high school, when I was a junior, I had a wonderful teacher. And he started teaching us how to read a book, not just for the plot and what happens, but to look at the craft techniques that an author used, how they used symbolism, what the themes of the book were, why the author chose to have characters do the things they did. And it really opened up the world of literature to me. And it made me realize that being a slow reader was okay because I could see all these things that the people who were kind of skimming through didn't really pick up all of that. And that's when I really started to love reading.
That love of reading you found in high school clearly led somewhere. You had a lot of different careers before becoming a children's author. What made you decide to write kids' books?
Well, it was really after I had my own children and I started reading books to them. But there was one particular book that I read. I read a book called Jacob Have I Loved by the wonderful children's author, Catherine Patterson. And reading that book, it was just such a good book. I thought, these are the kind of things I want to write. I found that particularly novels for middle grade kids, your age kids, I found that they dealt with really interesting things because people your age, you're kind of at the point where you're stepping a little bit out of childhood and heading toward adulthood. And a lot of things change in your life and it brings up all kinds of questions. And I thought, well, that's just such an interesting part of life to explore and to write about and to read about.
I totally agree. I loved The Metamorphosis of Bunny Baxter, and I really liked Bunny, the main character. How do you come up with your characters, and do you have a favorite character that you've written?
This is going to sound a little silly, but characters just sort of start talking to me.
Wow.
I start to hear them in my head for both this book and my previous novel, Nikki on the Line. The way those characters really started to form was I just sort of heard them start to say the first lines of the book. A favorite character, it's sort of like asking who's your favorite child because you love them all. But I really do love Bunny. She is a very special character to me. But I have to say, I also really love her friend Sylvia because Sylvia has no filter. She just says whatever comes into her head. And it was a lot of fun to write her because of that, because I could have her say things like, it's really not very polite. You would not say things like that to your friend, but she says whatever, and then it brings some humor to the book. And I like to have humor in my books.
How do you get your inspiration for your books? Do you know how your books are going to end before you get started writing them?
I wish I did. Yes, I do. I wish I was one of those writers who could kind of see the book as a whole and make an outline and follow it through, but I'm just not, which means it takes me a really long time to write a book. With Nikki on the Line, that book is about girls who play basketball. And I did have an idea of where I wanted Nikki's character to start and where I wanted her to end up, the kinds of things I wanted her to go through. With Bunny Baxter, boy, I had no idea where I was going with that book. And yeah, I went down way too many dead ends and wrong turns, but finally I got there. This is one thing about for you and all your listeners who want to be writers. It can be so helpful to have a group of friends who are writers that you can trade your work with some, because a lot of times when I write something, it makes sense to me, but then when I hand it to one of my writing friends, they say, "What does this mean?" Or it doesn't really make sense going from here to here to here. And so that was really helpful for me with Bunny. I was able to share it with my critique group, who are all writers, and they were very helpful in helping me.
Yeah, that's a really good strategy for writing.
Yes.
Now let's talk about your new book. Your new book is a picture book, and it's called When George Washington Bowed to the New Nation. It comes out this month, and I was very lucky to read an advanced copy and loved it. Can you tell our listeners what the book is about and how you became interested in this topic?
So this book is about what happened at the end of the Revolution and what George Washington did. And a lot of people in England and all through Europe at the end of the war, they expected George Washington to do what other generals did when they overthrew a king or an emperor. They expected him to say, "Okay, well, now I'm the new king." And that's not what he did. He gave up his power and went back to being a civilian. And that was very unusual at the time. Now, when we think about our government or our democracy, we can look around the world and there are many, many democracies. And if we were living in a place where we wanted to start a new country, we could look at all these different democracies and pattern things. But there was nothing like that then. And so George Washington and the other founders, they were making it up, and they were doing something that was very, at the time, considered radical. That George was not saying, "Okay, now I'm going to be the new king." So that's what this book is about.
So a little more what you said before, the fact that George Washington gave up his power was totally unexpected at the time. Why do you think he did it, and what did you learn about power from learning more about him?
Well, that's such a good question. Boy, why he did it was, he and the other founders, the men who were in the Continental Congress at the time, and indeed all the people who fought in the Revolution and worked to gain independence, they weren't interested in having another king. They were determined to start a new form of government where the people got to choose their own leaders. And they were just determined to do that. And George Washington was very committed to that idea. It was very important to him.
That's really interesting. What is the message that you hope kids and parents will take away from the book?
Well, I hope that they take that in, that giving up power really was an unusual thing to do at the time. And that's what started our experiment in democracy, because we're still experimenting, aren't we? But I also hope that it encourages kids and families and teachers and whoever to want to learn more about this period in our history, because there is so much. I also hope it will inspire people, if they can, to visit some of the places where these things happened, because they're very interesting.
It definitely will. Now it's time for the lightning round. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. What is your favorite word?
This is so funny. I don't have a favorite word. I like silly sounding, funny sounding words like discombobulate, that feel funny in your mouth and sound funny. But I also like really soothing kind of words. And one of my favorite of those words is, it's an old-fashioned word. It's eventide, and it means the end of the day. And it's the time right when day is turning into night and everything goes quiet outside. The birds stop singing. Oftentimes the breeze stops blowing. It's just a really quiet, soothing time of the day.
What is your favorite children's book written by someone other than you?
I have so many favorite authors. I love the books by Gary D. Schmidt. There's just so much feeling in the books, and also there's a lot of humor. I love Linda Sue Park's books. There's a book called Still a Work in Progress by Joe Knowles that I've always loved. And I have a good friend who's a writer named Diana Harmon Asher, and her first book is Sidetracked. It's about kids running cross country.
Yeah.
But that's such a small part of the books, but it's really a wonderful book. But I just read a book recently that I liked so much. It's called Soul Lanterns, and it's by a woman named Shaw Kuski, and it's about Japanese children in Hiroshima some years after World War II. And it's a lovely, lovely book.
I can imagine. If you weren't an author, who would you be?
Well, I'm not sure. I guess I would probably be a garden designer. I like gardens so much. I wish I could say that I'd be like a painter because I'd love to be able to paint, but no, I can't. So, so I think I'd probably be a garden designer because I could be outside all the time too.
What were you most curious about when you were a kid, and what are you most curious about now?
I just always loved learning new things, and I still do. I liked listening to my parents when they were having conversations with other people and trying to figure out what they were talking about. And I always liked school a lot. Well, it was hard for me to learn to read, but other than that, I am curious about all kinds of things, and it kind of leads me in too many directions. I could probably get more books written if I would hone in a little more.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Miss Roberts. And to our listeners, make sure to read When George Washington Bowed to the New Nation. I hope this interview sparked your curiosity to ask a few more questions, read more books, and even plant your own garden. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Interviewsicle.